Hi y'all, I'm Allison. Today we'll be moving on to our fourth stop in our Start and Stop Buddy read of The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. So as you know, you can either have already read up to our stopping point for today, or you can take advantage of the little pause title screens for each chapter and read along with me as I make my way through, reacting and speculating. Although I will say there hasn't been much opportunity for speculations because things are kind of laid out for us. It's different, obviously, than our modern mysteries and detective stories that we're used to. I'm noticing the lack of the twists and turns that, I believe it was Nick pointed that out. And, you know, our red herrings, we don't really have much of that because the inspector kind of comes in, lays out the facts, disappears, and then we continue back on with their other little subplots. So hopefully today we'll get more from the Moonstone. And I really want to know about Rosanna. I don't think she's dead. That's my take on it. I find it hard to believe that she is. Who knows? Maybe it's true. And hopefully we'll find out today. So I know a couple people have dropped out already. They said they just couldn't. This isn't their type of book. Whitney has decided to DNF it, but she's going to stick through the videos because she does want to know what happens. It's just too much of a laborious read, a little too slow paced for her to stick with it. And I can understand, as I've mentioned before, I am reading at a much slower pace than normal. So it is a time commitment with this one. I am enjoying it though. The question is, will the humor continue to carry me through all the way to the end? So let's not waste any more time. I'm going to be going from page 304 all the way up to 412 today. Okay, I'm going to sit at my desk. Hopefully that'll keep me more focused instead of relaxing in a chair, and dive right back in. That was really far to go. I think he's talking to Mirth White, and by he, it's the lawyer. Bruff, what's his name? Something like that. Bruff. And they're discussing the three Indians. So that's where we are, and I'm just going to jump right back in. I, of course, will let you know if I come across any footnotes or endnotes. Give us a little bit of context. I will let you know if there's any moments or any major plot points in case anybody else has decided to set aside their book, but they still want to know what's going to happen, as Whitney from Tiburon's Den has done. And someone else also DNF'd at the very beginning. I don't think they got past the prologue, which is understandable. That prologue was very dense. Okay, we're starting out with them trying to figure out the plot behind the India's motives. I guess they're looking for the why of it, why they would be interested in it. They have deduced that this is kind of like a little subset of the organization, the society with the Brahmins, where they are passing on the torch, probably putting together that these are guardians. We, of course, already know this, which I think is part of why we're struggling with it, because there's nothing really being revealed to the reader. We're just waiting for them to catch up to what we already know. At least that's my take on it. So I just finished the end of Bruff's narrative, and Muthwaite was laying everything up for him. I did get a little bit more insight into the Indians, and what he was getting at was, you know, these are obviously successors to the original group that was following Herncastle all those years ago when he was sending those letters repeatedly, saying if anything happened to him, it was murder. So apparently, using their contacts that they've developed while watching Herncastle, they learned about the will and that Rachel was going to be receiving the Moonstone on her birthday. So it's just been a waiting game for them, and they're just trying to intercept the diamond when it's transferring hands. Like I suspected when they came to visit Bruff, they were trying to determine when the Moonstone was going to change hands again because of the death. So apparently in June of 49, the Moonstone will be moved again because that's when the year mark will hit. So anyway, I've got a little bit of insight into how they are functioning. And again, it's just kind of laid out. There's really nothing to speculate about. Although I did find it intriguing, and the pace wasn't painfully slow. So, and now we are going to move on to our third narrative, Franklin Blake, and I'm hoping we find out about Rosanna, because I really think they have some kind of a connection. I'll be surprised if they don't, but there's something more to Rosanna. All right, let's see if we find out. Okay, so we're already in spring of 49, and we know that they're waiting for June of 49 for the diamond to move, the Indians, that is. And so I don't know if we've had a little time jump or they're finally providing a time frame for us. So Mr. Franklin Blake has to return to England because his father died, and he just received a letter from Bruff informing him. So he is heir to the great fortune and everything. Okay, so we have a little footnote. Apparently he found out that Rachel is now living with a widowed sister of the late Sir John Ferdinander. So she's with Mrs. Merridew. And Mrs. Merridew is now her guardian. And her house is in Portland Place. And that is a street in a luxurious London neighborhood. So Miss Rachel is living a good life, I would assume. At least in a fancy house. Oh, and they do get along admirably well. So Rachel landed on her feet, so that's good to know after Mr. Ablewhite threw his little hissy fit about her calling off the wedding and refusing to be her guardian. And I didn't make that connection last time, but he is her uncle. Her uncle. That's her mother's brother. And he just tossed her out like that. She's like, really? Shows what was important to him. Even without being on the page, I find Rachel insufferable. As she refused Franklin's attempts to visit her when he returned back to London, he immediately went straight to her. She won't see him. She's still apparently having her little hissy fit because he contacted the police when the Moonstone was originally lost, stolen, whatever you want to call it. And because of that now, she's probably going to be even more upset if she realizes that he's determined that he's going to solve this mystery once and for all and be done with it, because it's beyond ridiculous. If she was mad at him then, he's just going to see it through to the end and hopefully bring this all to a close and maybe allow them to be reconciled. And the best thing about it is he's going to Betteridge to start filling in the answers. So we're going to go spend some time with Betteridge, and hopefully we will finally find out what is in that letter that was sent to Lucy for Franklin that she insisted to hand. She has to hand it to him personally. So let's see if we're going to get any answers in that quarter. Okay, I'm really surprised to find out Cuff has retired. He's got a little cottage in Dorking, which does have a footnote that's in Surrey, a county in the south of England. So I don't know how far away it is. But yeah, so Cuff retired. And I'm surprised to see that Betteridge thinks that Cuff bungled it, because I thought that they were impressed with the way that Cuff handled the Moonstone. I guess for the fact that the Moonstone's still outstanding, nothing was solved. So I guess that's where his bitterness is coming from. Oh, not only is Cuff retired, but he's up to his eyes in the growing of roses. So good for Cuff. Oh, so Franklin says, okay, I ought to do it without Cuff's help. And he's gonna want Betteridge's. So once Betteridge realized that Franklin's motives were pure, Franklin's really just trying to repair his relationship with Rachel. That's his motive for wanting to find out what happened with the Moonstone. And now that Betteridge knows that no matter what he discovers, Franklin isn't going to think poorly of Rachel. In fact, he doesn't think poorly of Rachel to begin with. He just wants all of this matter behind him. So Betteridge is fully on board to help Franklin try to solve this. So Betteridge told him about Rosanna's sealed letter. It's still sealed after all this time. I want to know what's in it. So I think he's about to go get it. Well, Lucy definitely hasn't softened her view of Franklin. She just pretty much let her contempt of him show, but she did give him the letter from Rosanna, so she still fully blames Franklin for Rosanna's death if she died. Okay, so this is more mysterious than I expected. The envelope contained a letter, which also contained a slip of paper, and he read the letter first. It says, "Sir, if you're curious to know the meaning of my behavior, while you were staying in the house of my mistress, do as you're told. In the memorandum enclosed, and do it without any person being present to overlook you. Your humble servant, Rosanna." That doesn't sound very much like a love letter. That sounds more like blackmail. I think she entrusted him with the diamond, because it's sending him, it just says memorandum, go to the shivering sand at the end of the tide. Yeah, it's directing him to pull the chain. So she's telling him, is that what's buried there? Is that the dress with the paint on it, maybe? Yeah, so it's like Cuff predicted. She had a memorandum reminding her of how to get whatever it was she buried up there. Okay, one thing about that, that's definitely not the acts of a woman who was scorned or would give her life up for the unrequited love of someone, because she entrusted him with the thing. There's something more there. So why would she give it to him instead of Lucy? I don't know. At least there's something to puzzle out. Oh, he has to make the discovery alone. I thought that he was supposed to read the letter alone. So I better just leaving him on the rocks, waiting for the tide to subside. Yeah, and Betteridge points out that there's nothing in the letter stating he can't share what he's discovered. He just has to do the discovery by himself. And Betteridge is saying, you know, she died a terrible death. The least we can do is honor her wish. So I don't know, maybe she really is dead. So it was the nightgown with paint smeared on it. So we found that. But there was also a letter in the box. And the box being the tin box that she had purchased from Yolanda way back when everything went down. So he hasn't read the letter yet that was wrapped up with the nightgown. But he was saying there would be a quicker way to know whose it was since Betteridge was there. Recalling what Heffa told him, that whoever had the nightgown with the paint on it, that would be the person responsible for the Moonstone. And he saw his own name. So it's Franklin's nightgown. And is it that why Rachel was mad? Because Franklin was unknowingly implicating himself. Was my hypnotism theory correct? Was he hypnotized and he did it unknowingly? And that's why she's so mad, because she was sacrificing herself to save him. I might be onto something, or I'm having a lot more twists than are to be expected. He discovered himself as a thief. Dun, dun, dun. And you know that was where they ended the newspaper article or magazine way back in the day. That would have been a hell of a cliffhanger. Okay, so to his credit, Franklin didn't hide this knowledge from Betteridge. He immediately hands him the nightgown to show him. And then he kind of, you know, flips out. He's just laughing. He can't remember much of what was said. Just that Betteridge was telling him that he shall be able to face it, and Betteridge will be able to face it, and they should have a glass of grog. So whatever it is, they're going to work it out together. Which I like. I really like Betteridge. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. Franklin just remembered the letter. And he just opened it up and looked at the signature and said, "Stop. Rosanna Spearman came to my aunt out of a reformatory. Rosanna Spearman had once been a thief." Oh, I was thinking that, never mind, I was wrong. I was thinking that he recognized Rosanna Spearman as being a servant in one of his mother's households, but he was talking about Lady Julie's house. Damn. Anyway, he's recalling Rosanna's past, that she was a convicted thief. Oh, so here's her confession, her letter. Within there it says, I love you. So she really was head over heels for him. You know what? She was doing like stalker behavior, taking his flowers and everything. I wonder if she stole one of his nightgowns and was sleeping in it. And she was actually wearing it when she's the one who broke into the room. That would make sense. That moment when she saw him, she fell in love at first sight and just fixated on him from that point on. You know, swapping out the flowers. She was hating Rachel, jealous, and so I'm beginning to believe that she actually did kill herself over unrequited love, and I'm only halfway through her letter. And if not, she probably would have ended up killing Rachel. She's definitely unhinged. Clearly obvious. But I'm going to go back to the letter. So even she was mad. She's talking about in her letter that when that diamond was lost, and she was angry with Franklin, knowing no better at that time, for the pains he took in hunting for the jewel and sending for the police. I don't know. Why is everybody mad at him for trying to do the right thing? God, she used to kiss his pillow when she went in to clean his room during the day. So I was wrong. She didn't steal his nightgown and sleep in it as some kind of a stalker thing. She was cleaning up his room and saw the nightgown on the bed. And when she went to fold it up, she saw the stain of paint from Miss Rachel's door. And we have a footnote for that. The stained nightgown recalls the celebrated road murder of 1860, during which 16-year-old Constance Kent killed her 4-year-old half-brother in their home and stuffed his body down a latrine. She hid the bloody nightgown she wore during the murder. Local police, refusing to believe that a young girl could have committed the crime, ignored the missing nightgown and other evidence. The famous Inspector Jonathan Witcher, a likely model for Cuff, suspected Kent but was unable to collect evidence against her, and charges were dropped. She confessed to the murder in 1865 and served 20 years. Dang. So that was a reference to another notorious crime that the contemporary readers of this book would have been like, oh, it's a stained nightgown, because I'm sure that was front page for who knows how long, trying to solve who would kill a 4-year-old. Oh my God. Okay, I wasn't expecting that. Apparently, Rosanna, she's like, oh, she knew when the paint was supposed to dry because she had talked to Penelope, so she knew that the nightgown had gotten stained between midnight and 3 a.m. And then she was like, why is he in Rachel's room between midnight and 3 a.m.? You can imagine the conclusion that she jumped to. And after thinking it over, she decided that the thing wasn't likely. Because he had been in Miss Rachel's sitting room at that time of night with her knowledge. And if he had been foolish enough not to take care of the wet door, Rachel would have reminded him. And she would never have let you carry away such a witness against her. You know, because being in her room at that time, it was scandalous. So based on that, Rosanna's like, this doesn't make sense. At the same time, she wasn't completely certain that she had proved her own suspicion wrong. So she decided to hide the nightgown, wait and watch and see what happens. So, yeah, because really the only thing the nightgown does is place him in her room between 12 and 3. And there could be other reasons for being there. Oh yeah, so she kept it for 2 reasons. She kept it out of her love to protect Franklin, and she also kept it in case she needed revenge against Rachel. And that's what angered Franklin the most, I think, the revenge. So she went back to check to see if there was any more paint stains. And she found them on the inside of the dressing gown. Not the linen dressing gown that he normally wore in the summer, but a flannel dressing gown. And then she was able to scrape it off since it was flannel. You can remove that top layer. So there was no other proof against him. So his nightgown and the flannel dressing gown, which he normally wouldn't use. Was he being framed? Okay, we just had the introduction to Ezra Jennings. I don't know if he's going to end up being significant or not, but he appears to be the doctor's assistant, because the doctor way back when at the dinner party, Rachel's disastrous dinner party, when he went home in the rain, he hasn't been well since, and he had to take on an assistant. But back to Rosanna's letter. I mean, she laid it all out. Everything is just there's a complete rehash of everything that Rosanna was involved in. So for anybody else who is still watching the videos, and although you've set aside the book, you might want to pick your book back up and go to chapter 4 in Franklin's narrative, read Rosanna's letter, and that will kind of give you the full play-by-play on everything. I don't want to repeat it all because that's not a point of this, and it would take too long. It was a really long letter, but it pretty much explained everything involving Rosanna, and I now do believe that she is in fact dead. So she just happened to die off page, and here was her big hurrah. And that girl was, yeah, delusional to say in the least. I am intrigued because I have no idea where this is going to go now, which is a good thing. We've got more of the letter still. So her letter was 8 pages, a little bit under in chapter 4, and we have another 6 pages in chapter 5. She didn't write a letter, she wrote a book. Okay, she's going on in her letter how she could have helped him, blah, 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 if only she had spoken out. But she did say something of import that reminded me. So she's saying that she never suspected that he stole the diamond, since he's a gentleman, just for the sheer pleasure of the act. But she thought he was doing it to pay off his debts, and she could have helped him because she knew somebody that she could take the diamond to sell it or pledge it so as to get the money that he needed. So she had a connection. She knew what to do with the jewel. And originally, I think it was postulated that Rachel and Rosanna were working together, but she hates Rachel. She wouldn't have done anything to help Rachel if Rachel was the one who tried to pawn the diamond. So I don't know. Just reached the end of Rosanna's letter, and I don't know if I'm just really cold-hearted, but I grew tired of her victim mentality after a while. It was just like, you know, she was clearly delusioned and unhinged in regards to anything to do with Franklin. It's just, while I do feel bad for her, she had a bad life, and she was imagining slights that may or may not have been there. You know, the household staff wasn't very kind to her. They didn't welcome her. But she also said that she stood apart from them purposefully. So it's unfortunate what happened to her. But I have a hard time really feeling a lot of sympathy for her. Just like I don't like Rachel. I can't stand Rachel. So I will say this. I do like Rosanna more than Rachel. But that bar is really low. And I guess I'm not the only one, because even Penelope refers to Rachel's temper, and Betteridge refers to how Rachel can get on her high horse if things don't go her way. So, yeah, well, I do feel bad for what happened to Rosanna. At the same time, she had all of this built up in her mind. And even she recognized the fact that she was in love with the idea of Franklin. But anytime there was time to talk to him or anything like that, then she was scared of him. So she didn't, I don't think it was the man himself that she was in love with. I think it was the idea of him. And she wasn't as innocent as just an overlooked house servant, because she was planning either blackmail or revenge. She, was stealing things. She definitely had stalker tendencies, and she's a little scary when you look at it closely. So we're just gonna leave it at that. It did answer a lot of questions, wrapped up everything that she was involved in pretty much completely. But it reintroduces what happened to the Moonstone. So I do like that aspect of it. That it's just when you think you got it figured out, because now it's like, well, was Franklin wearing the nightgown? Was he the one who took the Moonstone out of Rachel's room? And I would say that the flannel dressing gown, the fact that Franklin was obviously surprised by it, the discovery of this letter and that dressing gown, I think that was genuine, his surprise by it. So that there's still a lot to be worked out. I don't think we're any closer to a solution than we were, which is convenient because we still have a lot of book to go. Okay, I'm gonna get a Diet Coke and then I'll be back. At least it's not dragging. I don't have that mental fatigue that I've had before. But I do want a little break. I'm getting hungry. I was just thinking about it, and I think the reason I'm kind of against Rosanna is, was it really necessary to rehash everything? Although I suspect that's part of the serialization, it coming out in the magazine had to remind the readers of everything that happened. But her letter was just so long and everything was being retold over again. And eventually she just started to sound like a martyr to me, and she was given a guilt trip. And I think if the letter had been shorter, I don't think that I would have hardened it against her. But yeah, by the end of it, I was just like, yeah, okay, we get it. You're the victim, and we should feel bad for you. And it had the exact opposite of effect that it probably should have. I probably really should feel bad for her, because it is sad. It's sad what happened to her. But by the time we got to the end of it, I was just over the guilt trip and the martyrdom. But anyway, let me know if y'all had the same reaction to it as I did. Was it just me? And feel free to disagree with me at any point. That can lead to some good discussions. So, all right, let's continue on. Okay, so things are starting to make a little sense, at least in regards to Rachel. And thanks to Mr. Bruff, after he looked over the letter, maybe I'm not so cold after all with my reaction towards Rosanna's letter, because he's thinking that it may not be as innocent or as truthful as Franklin is reading it. You take it on the surface, but it may just be that she intentionally was just trying to cause that rift between Franklin and Rachel so she could have Franklin all to herself. And I think that's what it was. She was just using this as a way to drive a permanent wedge between them so she could have Franklin all to herself. That's why she went to Rosanna, showed her the nightgown, showed her the paint, led Rosanna to believe that Franklin had stolen the diamond, and Rachel was willing to believe it because she had overheard Franklin arguing with a creditor. So it kind of sank his ship from there, and I think that sounds more plausible. And if that's the case, then I don't feel bad for not feeling bad for Rosanna, because she's not the innocent that she is proclaiming herself to be. And as Bruff pointed out, she can be quite scheming and devious, and I think that's what was going on. So again, is she really dead? I think she really is, but maybe not. And it still doesn't answer what happened to the diamond. So I don't think Franklin is the one who took it. I think he was framed. And possibly by Rosanna. Maybe she did, in fact, steal his nightgown, one of her stalker moves, and decided to use that to drive that wedge. We will see. Because she could also use it to ruin Rachel's reputation. You know, blackmailing her, showing that Franklin had been in her room during the unseemly hours of midnight and 3 a.m. So I wonder what Mr. Candy, the doctor, wants with Franklin. And Ezra Jennings, his assistant, his name is starting to appear more and more. Okay. She's claiming she saw Franklin take the diamond with her own eyes. That's why she's so angry at him. I did not expect that. Of course, talking about Rachel and Franklin. I wonder, did Lady Julia take it? She didn't want the stone in her house. And was it just somebody who was dressed in Franklin's robe? Oh, she saw his face and his eyes were open. Okay, then that blew that theory. His eyes were bright, brighter than usual. Hypnotized, I've been saying from the beginning. Okay, well, Rachel's anger seems justified now. She witnessed him take it. There was no question. He took the diamond. So I'm going to go with the hypnotized. That's my theory. Wow, okay, they just finished their confrontation. And so much drama. I can definitely see where Rachel would be livid. Especially when he's going around the next day. He's the one who wants to call the police and the one who's most concerned about solving the theft of the diamond. Yeah, you would just be appalled that somebody could carry that out. And there's no way you'd be able to trust them because you're like, I saw you do it. And now you're the one who's acting the most affronted by the act. So, yeah, I'm softening a little towards Rachel. I still don't like her, but man, you want to talk about not being able to trust yourself and feeling betrayed? You wouldn't. There's no way you could trust him after that. Although I have a feeling at the end that they're going to live happily ever after. It's got to be. He was hypnotized. There's no way around it. I'm calling it. So it looks like Rachel and Franklin have vowed never to see each other again, although she's not going to turn him in for stealing it. Okay, so apparently Franklin's going to go see Sergeant Cuff, and Mr. Bruff is going to be watching lurkers to see who appears to get the diamond. Okay, we have a footnote in regards to Sergeant Cuff, saying that he was placidly living out the last sybarite years of his life, smothered in roses, and sybarite means a person devoted to a life of pleasure. From the ancient Greek city in southern Italy, Sybaris, known for its love of luxuries. Oh, Cuff's gone to Ireland on business with his roses, of course. So Franklin's just stuck sitting around waiting for the diamond to be picked up, especially now that Cuff is in Ireland and not available to talk to. So he's kind of mulling things over, trying to figure all of this out. And he realizes that speaking to the guests that were there for the dinner party during Rachel's birthday might be the good way to go. Maybe that would fill in some gaps from his memory. And that brings us to a footnote, because it says, it was first necessary to process the complete list of guests. And it says that Franklin Blake now assumes the job of quasi-professional detective since Cuff will no longer participate in the case. So Cuff is out and Franklin is going to solve the mystery of the Moonstone himself. Or at least that's his plan. So Mr. Clark, the doctor, he is definitely behaving oddly, and his appearance has changed alarmingly so from his illness. hair has turned completely gray, his face is wizened, and his figure has shrunk. I wonder if he has also been hypnotized, because he's having memory issues, and whenever Franklin mentions the dinner party, he was, oh yes, the dinner party, I have something to say to you about that. But then he kind of goes blank again. Is it his new employee that is keeping him in a muddled state of mind? Oh, so Ezra actually caught Franklin on the way out the door after he failed to get any information from Mr. Candy. So maybe Ezra will tell him more of what's going on. It's just dragging again. So Ezra is explaining what happened to Candy, his illness, and how two local doctors disagreed on what was wrong with Mr. Candy after that night of Rachel's when he got sick. So ultimately ended up saving him, and I guess Mr. Candy was rambling on in his delirium when he was at the height of his illness, and Ezra managed to jot it down and make sense of it, but it's being so drawn out, it's getting to the point where it's like, I don't care what he said anymore. I guess I'm reaching the point where I'm getting impatient again, obviously. Do you want me to have it? So my daughter found a creamy coconut Dr. Pepper. She's very excited, and I will let you know if it was good or not. Stay tuned. While I get annoyed at the book for dragging everything out again. So just get on with it. What did he say? It's good. Okay, so after all of that long explanation and everything from Ezra, when Franklin asked to be told what he said, let's go back, let's look at the journals that you wrote everything down in. Ezra was saying, no, not so fast. Really? He's saying, well, would you disclose it? I was like, well, then why did you tell him if you're not going to tell him what was said? Okay, am I the only one who's frustrated? Because after all this buildup, it looks like now Ezra is not actually going to tell Mr. Franklin what Mr. Candy had been saying in his delirium during the fever. It looks like now he has to justify why that information should be shared. And it's like, can we just get to it already? Especially because Ezra even states, I have every reason to suppose that my notes contain something that he actually wished to say to you. So then just freaking tell him. Put us all out of our misery. Oops, I just realized I hadn't turned on my microphone. Sorry about the bad audio. Okay, here's a random thought. What if Rosanna isn't dead and she's the one who hogged the diamond and she's the one who's going to show up at Lurkers to get it? And the whole time she was framing, well, no, because Franklin did go in. He was witnessed by Rosanna. Oh, that's right. He was hypnotized. So at least that's my theory. I give up. I'm just going to hopefully get some answers. So now we have to find out Ezra's whole past before we can find out what was said by Mr. Candy. Milking that word count. So we have a footnote. Ezra is beginning to tell his story to Mr. Franklin. I am a man whose life is a wreck, whose character is gone. And character actually means reputation. Okay, so Ezra just ran off after dropping a bombshell that he can explain why Mr. Franklin doesn't remember taking the diamond and everything. I would assume he's been drugged, or the very same thing happened to Ezra, that he was hypnotized. So, I don't know. We will see. It was something like that. At least we're making some progress, but that chapter ended with a cliffhanger, so I'm assuming that is where the publication ended once again. At least I don't have to wait a week to find out. So we have a footnote when they're describing Mr. Candy's house. Wooden chairs of a sort that are seen in kitchens and cottages. A threadbare drugget in the middle of the floor. And a drugget is a cheap, coarse carpet. So he was in a trance induced by opium. And he was drugged by Mr. Candy. So he gave him opium because they quarreled about medicine at the dinner table. Dang. Did it as a trick. Oh, he wanted to take him down a peg. That's just, at the time, slipping the laudanum into his drink. It would have been similar given a sleeping pill. Still wrong on so many levels, especially from our point of view. But I guess then it wouldn't have been the crime that it is now to roofie somebody. That's basically what he did. He was just trying to prove that, oh, look, here's what medicine can do for you. But just so wrong. So wrong. Yeah, I'm trying to take that in terms of the acceptable societal norms at the time. And yeah, that one, it's a stretch for me. But I don't know that they would have viewed that as criminal like we would nowadays, thank God. He just wanted to bring him down a notch and put him in his place. I just reached the stop. So they're going to try Ezra's experiment to see if they can recreate the night that Franklin stole the diamonds, to prove that he was under the influence of opium when he did it. And I know there is some science to it. And in fact, at the beginning, or one of the end notes or something, said that all the science in here was sound. I know there have been studies if you're trying to recall information, like specifically for a test or something, that you'll actually have better results when it comes to test time if you're under the same conditions that you were in when you studied. So, but I'm not going to get deep into that. I am curious to see what'll happen here, but I was close. So far I was saying hypnotism or drugged. Same thing. The question is, who slipped the opium in his, oh, no, that's not a question. Mr. Candy did it. It was just to have a ha-ha, I told you so. Because he didn't like his profession being laughed at. Pretty despicable, if you ask me. But we don't need a magical paragraph this time, because when I come back, hopefully day after tomorrow, then we will be going to the end of this, and we will know all there is to know about the theft of the Moonstone. Today was better. That it didn't drag as much, although I did get impatient with it for a little while when it was rehashing everything. But you know, it wasn't as bad as it was in the previous ones. Especially, it wasn't as repetitive as when Mrs. Clack was during her narrative. I really want to know what y'all think about this. And what do you think about Candy drugging him? Is that forgivable? So we'll just leave it here. I hope to see you day after tomorrow when we do the conclusion. Be sure and let me know what you're thinking of the book, or if you're still out there. All right. Have a good one. Bye.